Chapter 26. At grandmother's house, Frances Dollarhide's new world was a forest of blue-veined legs. Grandmother Dollarhide had been running her nursing home for 3 years when he came to live with her. Money had been a problem since her husband's death in 1936. She had been brought up a lady, and she had no marketable skills. What she had was a big house and her late husband's debts. Taking in boarders was out. The place was too isolated to be a successful boarding house. She was threatened with eviction. The announcement in the newspaper of Marian's marriage to the affluent Mr. Howard Vaux had seemed a godsend to grandmother. She wrote to Marian repeatedly for help, but received no answer. Every time she telephoned, a servant told her Mrs. Vaux was out. Finally, bitterly, Grandmother Dollarhide made an arrangement with the county and began to take in elderly indigent persons. For each one, she received a sum from the county in erratic payments from such relatives as the county could locate. It was hard until she began to get some private patients from middle-class families. No help from Marian all this time, and Marian could have helped. Now, Frances Dollarhide played on the floor in the forest of legs. He played cards with grandmother's mahjong pieces, pushing them among feet twisted like gnarled roots. Mrs. Dollarhide could keep clean, wash dresses on her residents, but she despaired at trying to make them keep on their shoes. The old people sat all day in the living room listening to the radio. Mrs. Dollarhide had put in a small aquarium for them to watch as well, and a private contributor had helped her cover her parquet floors with linoleum against the inevitable incontents. They sat in a row on the couches and in wheelchairs, listening to the radio, their faded eyes fixed on the fish or on nothing or something they saw long ago. Frances would always remember the shuffle of feet on the linoleum in the hot and buzzing day, and the smell of stewed tomatoes and cabbage from the kitchen, the smell of the old people like meat wrappers dried in the sun, and always the radio. Rinse so white, rinse so bright, happy little wash day song. Francis spent as much as he could in the kitchen because his friend was there. The cook, Queen Mother Bailey, had grown up in the service of the late Mr. Dollarhide's family. She sometimes brought Francis a plum in her apron pocket, and she called him Little Possum, always dreamin'. The kitchen was warm and safe, but Queen Mother Bailey went home at night. December 1943. Francis Dollarhide, 5 years old, lay in his bed in his upstairs room in grandmother's house. The room was pitch dark, with its blackout curtains against the Japanese. He could not say Japanese. He needed to pee. He was afraid to get up in the dark. He called to his grandmother in bed downstairs. Amma, Amma. He sounded like an infant goat. He called until he was tired. Bidley's Amma. It got away from him then, hot on his legs and under his seat, and then cold, his nightdress sticking to him. He didn't know what to do. He took a deep breath and rolled over to face the door. Nothing happened to him. He put his foot on the floor. He stood up in the dark, nightdress plastered to his legs, face burning. He ran for the door. The doorknob caught him over the eye, and he sat down in wetness, jumped up and ran down the stairs, fingers squealing on the banister, to his grandmother's room, crawling across her in the dark and under the covers, warm against her now. Grandmother stirred, tensed, her back hardened against his cheek, voice hissing. "I've never seen." A clatter on the bedside table as she'd found her teeth, clank it as she put them in. "I've never seen a child as disgusting and dirty as you. Get out! Get out of this bed!" She turned on the bedside lamp. He stood on the carpet shivering. She limped and wiped her thumb across his brow. Her thumb came away bloody. "Did you break something?" He shook his head, so fast droplets of blood fell on grandmother's nightgown. "Upstairs. Go on." The dark came down over him as he climbed the stairs. He couldn't turn on the lights because grandmother had cut the cords off short, so only she could reach them. He did not want to get back in the wet bed. He stood in the dark, holding on the footboard for a long time. He thought she wasn't coming. The blackest corners in the room knew she wasn't coming. She came, snatching the short cord on the ceiling light, her arms full of sheets. She did not speak to him as she changed the bed. She gripped her upper arm and pulled him down the hall to the bedroom. The light was over the mirror, and she had to stand on tippy-toe to reach it. She gave him a washcloth, wet and cold. "Take off your nightshirt and wipe yourself off." Smell of adhesive tape and the bright sewing scissors clicking. She snipped out a butterfly of tape, stood him on the toilet lid, and closed the cut over his eye. "Now," she said. She held the sewing scissors under his round belly, and he felt cold down there. "Look," she said. She grabbed the back of his head and bent him over to see his nether region lying across the bottom blade of the open scissors. She closed the scissors until it began to pinch him. "Do you want me to cut it off?" He tried to look up at her, but she gripped his head. He sobbed, and spit fell on his stomach. "Do you?" "No, 𝘰𝘕. No, 𝘰𝘕. I pledge you my word, if you ever make your bed dirty again, I'll cut it off. Do you understand?" "Yes, 𝘰𝘕." You can find the toilet in the dark and you can sit on it like a good boy. You don't have to stand up. Now go to bed. At 2 a.m., the wind rose, gusting warm out of the southeast, clanking together the branches of the dead apple trees, rustling the leaves of the live ones. The wind drove warm rain against the side of the house, where Francis �$, 42 years old, lay sleeping. He lay on his side, sucking his thumb, his hair damp and flat on his forehead and neck. Now he wakes. He listens to his breathing in the dark and the tiny clicks of his blinking eyes. His fingers smell faintly of gasoline. His bladder is full. He feels on the bedside table for the glass containing his teeth. �$, always puts in his teeth before he rises. Now he walks to the bathroom. He does not turn on the light. He finds the toilet in the dark and sits down on it like a good boy.